Hi, I'm John Messer. I'm the executive of the Great Lakes Regional Synod, and I'm the Leadership Development Catalyst for Luminix. Today I'd like to talk to you about the change roller coaster, and we're going to take 2 sessions to talk through this since there's a lot to it. But the change roller coaster is very important because, quite honestly, we all go through change and it follows the same pattern. And it's really important as leaders that we understand how change works. So what I'd like to do is just introduce you to the change roller coaster first. And it's basically this: if we put it on the axes of energy and time, where energy is increasing here, time increases there, the roller coaster is actually the process of going through all of the stages necessary for organizational or individual change. There are eight stages that we're going to talk about here, but it's important to understand, first of all, that on the left side of the roller coaster are emotional tasks, and on the right side of the roller coaster are the intellectual tasks. So when we're talking through an individual or organizational change, when we start, when the change is announced here, actually there's a little bump in energy. We have kind of an excitement. There's, oh yeah, we're going to do something exciting. We're going to make a change. And very quickly then that wears off. And the reality of a change process starts to kick in. And so stage 1 is a sense of unsettledness. We feel unsettled. And for every stage, there is a task that we have to accomplish. And in stage 1, it's simply recognizing that it's okay to feel unsettled, that it's all right to be dissatisfied, and that's perfectly normal because that's part of the change process. The second stage is denial and resistance. And you may recognize that this is kind of paralleling the Kubler-Ross stages of grief. And that's very much what it is, because in change, the emotional work is actually getting through the grief process until we get down to the point where we can actually make positive intellectual change. But the second stage is then denial and resistance. And what we have to do in that stage is to recognize that denial is actually denial and resistance is resistance, and call it that. Very often we get stuck in change processes because we're denying it and we're resisting it, but we don't recognize it for what it is. For example, resistance to change tends to come from 3 particular areas. Number 1 is that I don't understand the change, so I resist it. Or secondly, it's that I don't like the change, so I resist it. And there's another one that's really important for leaders, especially church leaders, and that's this: I don't like the person trying to make the change, therefore I resist it. So rather than trying to say it's something else, acknowledge that I don't like it, I don't understand it, or I just plain don't like you, and so I'm resisting it. Call it what it is. That's reality. So that's your task in the second stage. Third stage is simply facing reality. We have to face the situation realistically. For example, we can't stay where we were. We can't go back because we've changed already. So we're going to have to go forward, and that's the reality. Now you can face that, or you can try resisting. You can continue to deny, but then you'll never make a healthy change. Finally, once you've faced reality, then you come to the point of having to let go. And having to let go is actually that place where you are experiencing kind of the fullness of grief. We grieve what we're losing. We grieve what has been lost. And quite honestly, it's important for us to understand that this grief also has to include what we have lost by resisting or putting off what should have been changed earlier. All of those opportunities that we lost, all of those relationships we might have missed out on, all of those things that we missed because we held on too long to an inappropriate or an outdated situation. So once we have made those 4 stages, we get to the point where we are able to let go. And what I want to do for you in this first video is to just help you see that this is not only an organizational process, it's also an individual process. And when you think about the life of Peter, he's a great example of this. And Peter was the one who, following Jesus, there was this initial excitement. It was unsettled. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what this is going to mean, but I'm excited about it. And Peter was that very energetic guy who was ready to go to the end of the earth for Jesus. Remember, he said, I will never deny you. I'll never, ever fail you. And so denial and he was resisting the reality that Jesus said, I'm going to have to die. He was denying a reality that Jesus said, you will. So then Peter, immediately following, saying, I'll never deny you, I'll never fail you. What does he do? Fails him, denies him 3 times. And then he has to face the reality that he too is mortal. He is just as weak as his brothers. And so what happens is he ends up grieving. He grieves the reality that he failed his Lord. But he's able to get to the point of letting go. Why? Because he recognized the failure of trying to hang on to his way and his ability when Jesus' way and Jesus' ability is so much better. And Jesus restored him and brought him to the point where he was able to let go and he was ready to change. So of these 8 steps, we're going to cover the next 4 in the next video. But recall, this side is emotional, this side is intellectual, and it's also important to see that on this side tends to be the known, and once we hit the point of letting go, we're letting go into the unknown because we don't know what's coming on this side. So we're going from the emotional to the intellectual, from the known to the unknown, and here's the real leadership tip for the day. When your people, or when you are dealing with this side of the change roller coaster, it's very important to pay attention to listening to what's happening here. Too often leaders who are faced with the grief response, who are faced with the pain and the hurt and the wonder of emotional responses to change, the leaders too often try to tell them of what's going to happen next, of what the plan is going to be, of what they're going to implement, of what a new program will look like. Always deal with the emotional first in order to have a healthy change process on the right side. So stick with us next time and we'll learn more about the change roller coaster. Thanks.